begin. Thank you so much for coming out. It would have been really weird if nobody showed up. But how many of you have never heard me give a talk before? Please raise your hand. Awesome. That means to you at least, all the stupid jokes are brand new. The others, just do a little amnesia on yourself and enjoy them the second time round. But we're going to cover some interesting things here, and I'm very grateful that you come out and realize that once we finish this session, Chris and I are off work now. The entire rest of the conference, we're just going to hang around and go and see other people. Check out some of the other great trainers here. There's some fabulous, fabulous people. This conference is the best hypnosis training conference in the world. It's the thing I love what Scott Sandlin and Richard have done is they brought people from all kinds of hypnosis, and everybody gets along. You know, we may not agree on stuff, but we've made friends from so many different systems, and I think it's a blast. So take advantage of the amazing training that's offered here. And those of you who missed the bowling last night, that's unfortunate. In fact, it was the greatest bowling event in history. We had an all-star team that was by invitation only. It was me, Chris Thompson, our captain, we had Steve Rame. Actually, no, I'm not going to drag the wire. Thank you. He's got it all going through there, and he records it for you.
Okay, so I can get the audio.
You can go home.
Oh, cool.
Thanks, man. Wide awake now. Okay, so he's not actually a technical person. It's all part of the hypnosis. So anyway, we had this amazing bowling team, Melissa Tears and Steve Rame and David Snyder, and we were the wrecking crew. And Chris Thompson had these incredible bowling shirts made with the Orleans Hotel being knocked down by, you know, a wrecking ball, and it was great. And although we didn't technically win, we were the Harlem Globetrotters of hypno bowling. Every shot was a trick shot, and I think it was universally agreed that because all 5 of us were seriously injured going into the competition, all 5 of us were exhausted and had the flu, and you know, had an off day, and Steve Rame couldn't make it, and we had to sub for him. Nevertheless, everyone at that bowling alley agreed that we technically won in the eyes of every other human. So, thank you very much. Anyway, enough of the silly stuff. Enough of the silly stuff. Damn, he's got the trophy. So, here's how we're going to cover this. I was asked initially to do a number of different things. I picked Deepeners That Work because I am just so sick and tired of hearing students count down 5,000 flights of stairs and sit in 16 different colored couches and float down to 200 different levels and rub their name out on beaches 60 times as the waves go. There's some great deepeners that will save you a heck of a lot of time. And so that's what I was going to do initially because it was going to be a 1-hour session, which is technically 50 minutes. And then I found out, oh no, it's a 2-hour session. So we're going to do much more than that. We want to give you a lot more. So I'm hoping that you get some questions ready. We will go through the deepener stuff and the rationale behind it, maybe a few demos, and then maybe I'll teach you a couple of really cool power inductions you've probably never seen before because they are original. And then we'll carry it as far as the questions go and see what happens. Is that cool? All right. So let's look at the foundation of what we're going to do first. I retired. I've been doing hypnosis full-time for 42 years. I have lived, eaten, and breathed hypnosis since that time when I quit my job in Toronto in the corporate field. And January 29th, 1975, started working as a stage hypnotist, got into all the other things, and began doing forensic hypnosis and training and so on. So it really has been all I've done for a very long time. And I retired in 2000 because I just was mostly doing lectures and things. I retired as a therapist. And then in 2004, I got drawn out of retirement because I got an email that was just irresistible. Now you must understand, some of you are aware that my friends and I play a lot of hilarious practical jokes on each other. And well, they don't typically play them on me anymore because I operate on the principle of 1,000-fold retaliation. And because I'm self-employed, accountable to no human being, the results can be devastating. So I got an email that was clearly a practical joke. And it was a man who claimed to be a musician with a famous rock band that you've definitely heard of, an Australian band. And he said he was suffering from some mental disorders. He called it head noise, that was the Australian term. But the actual term was, can't remember what it even is. Depersonalization syndrome. I had to look it up. This poor guy did so much dope, he was now dissociated from his own life, and he had no emotions. So everything he was experiencing in life, he had no good emotions or bad emotions, everything was flatline all the time. No fun in that. And he said, I want to fly you over to Australia and have you fix me. And I knew it had to be a friend of mine. I was just trying to, is it John? Is it Paul? You know, is it George or Rick? No, John, Paul, you know, Chris. Somebody's doing a joke on me here. So I said, oh yeah, of course I will. Here's what I want from you. And I named a ridiculously high fee. And I also said, and I want business class airfare from Toronto by Qantas. And he said, all right, I'll get back to you. I said, sure you will. And then I waited for like 3 days for one of my friends to give it away. You know, this kind of thing. So, any interesting emails lately? You know, ha-ha, bastard. But it didn't happen. And then about 6 days later, I guess, maybe a week, I got a phone call from TD Canada Trust, where my business account is, and they said, Mike, we just want to let you know there's been a very unusual transfer of a lot of money to your bank account electronically. And I went, shut the front door. It was real. And so then the plane tickets arrived in the mail, so I left in May of 2004, and I worked with this guy for a week. But the reason I'm saying all this is because the first thing we were going to do as a group was something I had just started doing then. Back in those days, I had discovered in a very obscure book on Chinese medicine an amazing method for changing people's beliefs almost instantly. And it's tied into a spot on the back of the hand, which is used in most EFT protocols now. And so I started using this with clients to change their beliefs, negative beliefs, to positive ones in seconds. Typically takes about 30 to 45 seconds. And so when I was working with this guy in Australia, this is my fifth trip there, and I love the place. Like Canada, you have an enormous nation that is formerly part of the British Empire that is, you know, based mostly on distant communication, long power lines, and consumption of beer and cooking barbecue food. So we had a lot of similarity there. And I'd worked with the guy for the entire Monday, and guess what? I could not get him into hypnosis. Now this is a new experience for me, because typically hypnosis is like breathing. It's not hard, and I struggled with it. Because of his depersonalization syndrome, I couldn't get to the problem state. And so halfway through the second day, I'd been doing NLP interventions and timeline therapy, and I was throwing everything at this guy, and he was just distraught and uncomfortable. And I thought, well, let me do the Chinese medicine thing. So I got him tapping on the back of his hand here, and I said, stand up, you're gonna move your body. I said, I want you to say this as though you mean it, even if you don't. He said, okay. I said, tap here. Now here's one of his huge problems was this man had been gone through such a funk in his life, he lost his mojo. This is a multi-millionaire rock star who's lost his confidence around women. What is wrong with this picture other than everything? And so he just no confidence with women at all. So I said, I want you to tap here and say, I'm confident around women. So he goes, I'm confident around women, Mike. I said, say it like you mean it. He goes, oh, I'm confident around, really confident around women, Mike. I said, say I'm strong and virile. He said, oh, I'm strong and virile? That's not working. I said, say I'm a swinging dick. He goes, I'm a swinging dick. I'm a swinging dick. You can see this installing, and after about 40 seconds, this guy's entire state changed. I saw it work really, really well. And so we went out for lunch, taking a break, and his secretary runs into us in the street at Byron Bay, and she says, how's the therapy going? He goes, I'm a swinging dick. And she went, oh. She said, I don't know what you're doing, but he needs more of this. So I started using this for everything. In fact, on September 8th, coming up, I'll be performing at Western University in Ontario for the 43rd year in a row. 43 Frosh Weeks. And so the kids who saw me 43 years ago are in their 60s now, and I'm still showing up at their schools. And I got to perform for over 6,000 kids with rear projection screens, the security like it's a Black Sabbath concert. I mean, it's amazing, big outdoor gig, and this is how I get in the zone for it. And I want you to have this forever. Use it with your clients, use it on yourself, because this is what it does. It will draw, according to Paul Frederick's ego state theory and Watkins and Gordon Emerson out of Australia, this will draw a very powerful ego state into the executive of your brain. Now, ego states are not imaginary, they're not psychological, they are hardwired into the physical structure of your brain as neural pathways. When we have ego states in the executive, they talk differently than each other, they act differently. Some of them have allergies and others don't. Some of them have different vision, some are nearsighted and some aren't. And you have 50 to 150 ego states or sub-personalities. You use about the same 5 to 15 every day. And I have a friend who passed away, Zoe Stotland, and whenever she was in a bad ego state, I could bring her out of it by interrupting her pattern and bringing a different one to the executive. Just think of the brain throws a switch and another circuit connects and the other personality comes in. And so she was complaining about her work and she wasn't making any money, and Michael this, and Michael this, was so annoying, this. And she had a little black dog, Benji, she loved. And all I had to say was, hey Zoe, how's Benji doing? There'd be 2 seconds pause on the phone as the other ego state came in. And she'd go, Benji's a good doggy, he's right here. And the other ego state jumps in. So you can switch them really super fast. If you want to look into this, I highly recommend the work of Gordon Emerson. And in fact, if you are running into difficulty with clients, and I heard brilliant Melissa Tears yesterday say this in a different way, but it's the same thing. One of the problems we run into as therapists is somebody comes into the office, we work with them, but it's not changing them. We're talking about the problem instead of interacting with the problem. And the way we see it in ego state theory is this. The ego state that has the difficulty, that is wounded, evaded, disrupted, whatever, isn't executive when we're doing the therapy. We got another one there that knows about it. So it's like if you have a problem and I'm saying to Neri, so here's what I want you to do. You're disconnected from it, so you have to get the state executive. So what we're going to do is get a really powerful state in your executive right now, a powerful learning state, because I want you to learn consciously and unconsciously. And your unconscious mind is going to draw in all of this information over the next little while at a rate that is astounding. Because on the surface, you'll only be taking in the classic magic number 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information. But unconsciously, your brain will be taking in a wealth of 3 to 20 million bits of information. And as it does so, working beneath the threshold of your current awareness and attaches all of these things to whatever problem situation you run into. When the resources become available, the shifts will happen automatically down beneath the surface, and only then will you recognize at that point how much things have changed. Now, the second freaky thing about hypnosis and using hypnosis to change things is the more you talk about it, the more it starts happening. And the third freaky thing about hypnosis is I'd like all of you to forget the first freaky thing now. That's right, just like that. See, if you've been listening, you have about a 20-second gap where you can't remember what I was talking about. And the more intently you were listening, the further it's gone. But I think it's important for you to be certain to remember, to forget certain things. Haven't you? Remember amnesia? Is it possible to remember amnesia? It's not forgetting. Amnesia is forgetting that you have forgotten anything. Like that. And that internal dissociation you're locating in your mind right now is because your unconscious mind is listening to me. Wide awake now. Just showing off. So, what I'd like you to do, everybody stand up. Let's get the good ego state executive. So, free up your hands. Remove your shoes. Just kidding. So, on the back of either hand, you'll find a channel between the 4th and 5th metacarpals. In other words, between the ring finger and the baby finger. 2 fingers of your other hand, usually your dominant hand, will fit right into that space real nicely. 2 fingertips wide. And you can do it like this, or you can do it like this. Just tap there firmly and repeatedly, not hard enough to bruise. Stay relaxed, breathe deeply, and say this as though you mean it. And I'm not going to say, I am a swinging. No, no, no. Here we go. So tap, tap, tap. Okay, say this like you mean it. I am in the zone.
I am in the zone.
I am powerful.
I am powerful.
Keep tapping. I'm feeling awesome.
I'm feeling awesome.
I am hypnosis incarnate.
I am hypnosis incarnate.
I'm the best hypnotist in my body.
I'm the best hypnotist in my body.
I love this stuff.
I love this stuff.
People in this room are my best friends.
People in this room are my best friends.
And I'm in a super learning state.
I'm in a super learning state.
And I haven't just joined a cult.
And I haven't just joined a cult.
Take a breath. Feel the tingling. Woo! Excellent. Sit down. Give yourselves a hand. That was great. So, if we're talking about deepening trance, no, I'm not going to. It'll disrupt your view. Oh, you've got a microphone right in front of your eyes anyway. Here, I'll move this for you. How's that? Comic genius. Right. What is this thing that we're going to deepen in the first place? Depending, and I love this, my friend Igor Ledohovsky interviewed me a little while ago for 9 hours, and he uses the line, he'll say, what do you believe about this? He'll say, it depends on which school of Chinese magic you were trained in. It's like, well, our Kung Fu is best. Well, our Kung Fu is better than yours. Everybody thinks their system's the best. And the cool thing about it is we're all kind of right in a way because all the stuff works. Otherwise, we wouldn't keep doing it, with the possible exception of talk therapy, which is, they don't understand hypnotists. If you fix things really fast and it's not painful and the problem never comes back and the person has a great life now, there's got to be something wrong with it. Talk therapy. Tell me about your problem over and over and over and keep re-anchoring it. Griffin and Tyrrell of human givens theory, they call it anti-therapy. And I really think it is. It enriches a heck of a lot of people and plunges a lot of other people into misery they do not have to have, right? You've seen people change fast. So I think initially you can talk about the problem in your session only because people expect that's going to be the case. They want to talk about it, but then you got to cut it off. You got to do a pattern interrupt or something, and then they stop talking about it and you move on to something else. So what is this thing we call trance anyway that we're going to deepen? In some schools of Chinese magic, they don't accept that trance even exists. And that, of course, is how Bandler and Grinder, John Grinder was one of my mentors, and how they would always teach hypnosis. Bandler would say, hypnosis is this and this and this, and John would say, I completely disagree, it doesn't exist. So they'd offer both sides. And then it became the discussion point, is trance a state? Is it something you are in? And I'm using the terms trance and hypnosis interchangeably here. Is it a state, or is it a process, something your brain is doing? And the answer, of course, is yes. Because trance is a state, not a special state, it's a naturally occurring one, and provided one continues to do the things one is doing, the state will continue. So it's a process consistently maintaining a state, which stabilizes the process. Much of the difficulty we see with hypnotic work is people can get you into a phenomenally deep trance, often with these PGO spikes from shock inductions, which I do too, not exclusively, but if you do not immediately take control of the trance, if you lag too long without stabilizing it, they'll start coming back out again and drifting to the surface as the brain restabilizes. So it's a state or a process. Yes, it is both. So let's look at some different models so we can see how we can then begin to deepen it based on the models. So one of my favorites is simply the NLP model for trance. It's the one I adopt most of the time. I'm primarily an Ericksonian, although I do both sides of the fence here. So I teach what I call a neo-Ericksonian approach. I will be as indirect as possible, but as direct as necessary. So anywhere between conversational hypnosis and slam dunk PGO spikes, pons, geniculate body, occipit in your brain, anything in between, whatever it takes to get the job done. So the NLP model, which comes from George Miller, I think about 1959, is the magic number 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information in your conscious awareness at any given moment. Whereas your unconscious mind is processing maybe 3 million to 20 million bits of information per second. And your brain, we now know, the neural connections are being made through protein kinase C, which you use to stabilize any new memory as it migrates to the hippocampus. When you get a new memory, your brain is making new connections that will stabilize the memory, but even the connections themselves, 1 million per second on average your brain is making. So since you've been in this room, your remarkable brain has made all sorts of connections. It's what it's really good at. It is a self-organizing, self-patterning machine. One of my teachers when I was younger said, what a stupid thing. It's the Stephen Wright line, Is that a picture of you when you were younger? Yeah, they all are. So my teacher, one of my teachers when I was younger said, well, in a simple cell, we'll discover, I call it, he said, sir, there's no such thing as a simple cell. If you look at the most basic cell imaginable under an electron microscope, it is more complex than New York City. And he had to admit that's true. As the psalmist said, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. No kidding. Inside your head, you have the most complex structure in the known universe. And nobody gives you an owner's guide. Nobody tells you how to run it. And so most people go through life ticking along, just randomly creating neuroses and psychoses and insomnia and all sorts of things like that. And that keeps you and I in business, so I guess that's kind of a good thing in a way. So the brain should not be allowed to tick along. So this model says that in conscious awareness at any given moment, you only have about 7 bits of information. And a great way to understand this is imagine the totality of all the information in your brain at any given moment. All the things are stored as 4 tuples, which is visual, auditory, kinesthetic, which is feelings and feeling, emotions, and an internal dialogue, your internal comment, auditory, digital, on whatever's happening. So you have all these memories stored in protein kinase C in your brain, and they're shifting all the time. And as Melissa Tiers said so beautifully yesterday, she said the best way to preserve a memory is to never access it. Isn't that awesome? Because as soon as you access it, you're changing it. It is impossible to access a memory without changing it, which is why our work can be so incredible. That's why we can go back into these initial sensitizing events and fix things and rewrite it. And as Richard Bandler said so wonderfully, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. You know, just write one now. In my own case, I was a terribly bullied kid. We came to Canada from England and moved to Toronto in 1957. I grew up in a very, very English family, which means that if I'd stayed in England, I'd still be speaking like this now, because this is how my family used to talk. And so we're going to do some hypnosis now. I want you to sit there. We're going to do this lovely thing. You're going to like it a lot. Aren't you glad I was rescued? I speak normally now. So we come to Canada, start doing all this hypnosis stuff, being Canadians, which is a whole other trance to adopt. So if you look at this model, the best way to think of it is a flashlight. So imagine an attic that has trillions of bits of information in it. And all of this is in complete darkness. But you do a magic flashlight that will only illuminate 7 things at once, whatever their size. And you walk through this attic, all these memories and bits of information, and everything you are illuminating at that moment is what's in your conscious awareness. Consequently, this magic number 7 plus or minus 2 is shifting all the time, so we can change what is in your conscious awareness by simply bringing it to your attention. For example, I can change your 7 chunks at the end of this sentence by having you notice the feeling of your shoes wrapped around your feet. So that has now jumped into conscious awareness, as has the sound of the ventilation. That's right. The feeling of your tongue in your mouth. Where did that come from? Bing, there it is. So those things are moving in and displacing other things. So this is a good model for hypnosis. Again, it's only a model. The whole conscious-unconscious thing, as an Ericksonian, Milton was a psychoanalyst, so we had a conscious-unconscious model. We never think in terms of, at least we don't think in terms of a subconscious. We don't even use that term. We find it to be needless complication. So conscious is everything you're aware of, unconscious is everything else. And it makes it real simple, because I think simple tends to be better for the most part. The other model is, let's say we have this beach ball here, this big beach ball. Sitting on top of it is a dime, which is a North American 10-cent piece. So you can't see it really well from wherever you are, which is the point. It's small. And this is your conscious awareness, and this is sitting on top of your unconscious mind. And this is your 3 million to 20 million bits of information per second hidden beneath the surface. So between the two, let's change colors, boys and girls. Between the two, let's posit the existence of a beautiful green fuzzy coaster that you can put your coffee cup on so it doesn't wreck the beach ball. So we have a dime sitting on top of a coaster sitting on top of the beach ball. And the coaster is the critical faculty. Take note, I'm a bit of a stickler on this because I'm the unofficial language policeman of the world. It is the critical faculty. It's not the critical factor. If you look up a factor, it is not a faculty. They're different. My friend Arthur is on the faculty of a university. He's not on the factor. 5 is a factor of 30. It's not a faculty of it. My grandfather is losing his faculties. He's not losing his factors. Although the aluminum in his food is probably a factor in his Alzheimer's, it's not a faculty of it. They're not interchangeable words. It is a faculty. So the critical faculty is the firewall of your brain. Technically your mind. It doesn't physically exist. And this determines what goes into and changes what's happening in your unconscious mind, whether or not it's permitted to get through. Until you are an adult, guess what? You don't have a critical faculty. Children don't have them because you get them by modeling people in authority and people you trust. They start to form in early childhood. Until you have a critical faculty, you believe anything at all. So if you say to a 5-year-old boy, hey, Tommy, there's a purple dragon out in the hall, and he's got a big box of candy for you. Tommy will run out in the hall and check. And then he'll come back about 10 minutes later looking confused, and he'll say, hey, Mike, there's no purple dragon out there with candy for me? And I say, of course not, son. You don't have a critical faculty. You believe this ridiculous stuff. One day you'll be an adult like me, and the world will be a dark and terrifying place. But in the meantime, enjoy your childhood. So look, if I ask you to go out, you know, there's a purple dragon in the hall with a box of candy for you, you know that A, dragons do not exist in all likelihood. B, even if they do in some remote part of the world, the chance of them being purple is somewhat unlikely. And then the said chance of that purple reptile being a purveyor of confectionery to small children. It's just non-existent. In other words, you're not going to go check, at least I hope you're not, unless you're hypnotized. Woo! So what we do as hypnotists is we have to bypass the critical faculty to get to the unconscious mind, and that is what an induction is. Now the problem is, when we got them there, we have bypassed this critical faculty, which of course doesn't exist. I mean, it really doesn't, any more than the childhood is spent creating a thing that doesn't exist so it can then work for them. But that being said, it's probably likely you don't even have a conscious mind. And recent neurological research, which amazes me, we were saying 20 years ago that the unconscious probably didn't exist. It's just mechanisms beneath the surface. But then you have to challenge it and say, how many people in this room are running their heart valve synchronization consciously? Nobody, I think. You know, can you imagine how awful that would be? You forget for 5 minutes, hey, look at her. Hang on! Your life would suck, to use the hypnotic term. So we can admit there is an unconscious mind because it's running all these things. And the simple proof is, think of your phone number right now. Now, before you did, where was it? It was unconscious. You weren't saying it in your head all the time. Your life would be pretty stupid then, if that was the case. So all this stuff is happening beneath the surface. The processing is beneath the surface. And so they were saying, oh, we have this conscious mind, maybe the unconscious doesn't exist, and then they, the ubiquitous they, start saying, well, clearly it does exist. The recent theory is that we don't have a conscious mind, and that freaks me out so much. The theory is that the unconscious is the only mind we have, and the conscious mind is entirely a projection that is designed to interface with this three-dimensional, well, four-dimensional world, so we can cope. Otherwise, we'd just be a brain sitting there looking scary. So, anyway, all that said, so then we get someone in a trance. So what is this trance thing? What is hypnosis? Okay, so one way of looking at it, a nice metaphoric model, is if you have a pond of water as the model, and this is a very Eastern concept, everything above the surface in the pond of water is conscious awareness because it's subject to the sunlight and the light and the rays and the knowledge and everything's in the open, whereas anything beneath the surface of the water becomes unconscious. It's hidden. That's where all the dead bodies are floating around and the shopping carts and the tires and things that people have lovingly thrown into a beautiful lake. So when we put someone in a trance, the surface of the water becomes blurred and sort of misty, and that's the critical faculty getting out of the way so information can pass to and fro from conscious to unconscious. That make sense? Now we get them in a trance though. So now we have this, if we look at it as a wave pattern. If this line is your line of normal conscious awareness, if you start to go into hypnosis, we start dropping down into trance. And I'm presuming you're going to go for the deepest trance you can, because somnambulistic trance, as Jerry Kind nicely pointed out, is the working state of hypnosis. This is where the changes take place. Now, does that mean you can't get change with a light state of hypnosis? Of course not. We know conversations where it's just hypnoidal and people change in front of our eyes all the time. But it's been my experience over the years that when people say, the only state you need for hypnosis to make change is a light state of hypnosis. And typically the people who repeatedly say that are the people who can only get you into a light state of hypnosis. Coincidence? I think not. So, we're going to presume that you are going to intentionally go for this deep trance. So let's just mark it off as though it existed. Again, this is a model. Don't go into the restaurant and eat the menu. So we say, here's your light trance, here's your medium trance, which Dave Ellman said did not exist, was purely a transitional phase between the light trance and somnambulism. And somnambulism, or deep trance somnambulism, after Marquis Pisaguro, whose subject in a mesmeric state did not twitch and convulse as he was supposed to, but instead his eyes opened, became blinkless, face became flaccid, lower lip size increased, all the external trance indicators that we're aware of from working with clients. The person looked like a sleepwalker, and he said, this person looks like a somnambulist, and they love the words, it sounds so scientific. So the somnambulistic state, this is where real change happens. But how do we get them there? What happens if we do an induction and we don't bounce them right down here right away? We're starting to do something verbal. And they begin to drift into a trance in increments. And then they may be stabilized somewhere. Now, even though I'm saying stabilize, this trance is a gross simplification. We would actually be looking at something like this. So here's your line of awareness. It'd be something like this. But the general trajectory would be that. So you see what I mean? It's always adjusting, always shifting. But one must stabilize it once we get it there. So typically people have used visual deepeners over and over again. And the reason people typically use visual deepeners, imagine a green chair and you walk into a room and sit in it, and you sink down to the level of whatever, is because 60% of people, North Americans at least, and Western Europeans, are primarily visual. Meaning although we use all of these different representational systems of visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, we rely on the visual one most. Think of it, this is a television and computer generation. It's not a listen to music and with no visuals. We even put the visuals on the music now. So visual is very important to us, which is fine, because it's the fastest of all the senses. When you process something visually, you can look at a painting and instantly get a feel for it. You process it in its totality to a large degree. In fact, the Chinese said, a picture is worth 1,000 words. In fact, they said it thousands of times, which makes you wonder why they didn't just paint a picture of it and be done with the whole subject. So visual is instant. Auditory is different. Auditory is sequential. You must have the words in order, or you must have the notes in order to make sense of the information you're getting. So auditory is by nature slower than visual. Also, we get to the kinesthetic sense, the feeling sense. This is the slowest sense. It's the slowest one to get into. It's the slowest one to get back out of. Think about it. A woman, her husband comes in late and she starts screaming at him and says, "You've been out drinking again, haven't you?" He said, "No, honey, I've not." "Get over here. You've been drinking. Just tell me. You've been downtown drinking. I know you have." "I haven't." "Tell me you've been drinking. Admit it." "No, I haven't. I was working late. Here's the boss. I brought him home for a cup of coffee." "Well, okay. Why are you still mad at me? I told you I didn't do anything." "Well, I can't just stop being mad instantly, you know." No, you can't. And it's even harder for men because there's a chemical aspect in our bloodstream. The kinesthetic system is slow. Slow to get into, slow to get out of again. But it's extremely sensitive. The surface of your eye, the cornea, is the most sensitive part of your body. You get a speck of dust in your eye, and man, does it hurt. And even when the dust is taken out, or the sliver or whatever is removed from your eye, it still hurts for about 2 minutes. The nerves keep transmitting because of the kinesthetic lag time. That's why when you've got someone in a deep feeling state trance, and they're just so relaxed, you can't go fast. You've got to give them time to respond. They're experiencing psychomotor retardation. Everything slows down. So if you say, "Okay, lift your right hand," and nothing's happened because he's going, "Okay," in his head, you know, "I told you, lift your right hand." No, you've got to give people time to respond in deep trances. So we've got the person in some sort of state. We want to stabilize it now. And that's why people have traditionally gone to many, many visual ways of increasing trance depth. You know, you're walking down an endless flight of stairs. They don't typically say you can feel the stairs. They say you can see this dark staircase going, or you're in an elevator. It's great. It works. It all works. I just want to give you some options. That's all. So here's a couple now. The easiest one that I use, and I've never seen this in any book until the last couple of years. Chris Thompson, my business partner, he and I, and he's a great hypnotist, he and I say, the stuff we put out on our Brain Software podcast and in our training becomes mainstream in 18 months to 2 years, which is fine, because we think we've got some pretty good stuff. But this is one of those wonderful things that I never saw. For 30 years I was doing this, and now it's starting to appear in books, which is good because people will start using it. Someone's in a deep trance, so we've got our imaginary subject here. You must all now utilize your ability to hallucinate someone sitting in this chair. And by hallucinating them sufficiently well, you are simultaneously creating a positive and a negative hallucination. There is no difference. I love that in the books. What's harder to create, a positive or negative? Oh, well, our school says a negative's harder. They're the same thing. In order to positively hallucinate someone in this chair, you must negatively hallucinate the back of the chair and the seat part. And in order to negatively hallucinate this chair sitting here, you must positively hallucinate the carpet that is underneath it. They're exactly the same thing. So someone's sitting here, and now I've got them in a trance, or her, or whatever, and I've done whatever method I've needed to get the person to this point. How do I do an almost foolproof means to get them to the next level? You let their unconscious mind do it for you. It's great at this stuff. It's better at it than we are. I mean, let's face it, we can't change anybody. We can't hypnotize people. They got to do the work. We can just tell them what to do. People come up to me all the time. "Well, I don't think you can hypnotize me." You're right, I can't. They think I'm going to fight with them. Say, "But you can go into hypnosis in about 15 seconds. I'll show you how." "Oh, but I got a really strong mind." Good, 10 seconds. You do it. Newsflash, it's you, not me. You're the only one who can fail. So, we got the person here. I've done whatever means, you know, these remarkable means. We've got a hypnotic state, and I'm ready now to do some solid change work with this wonderful person and have them go out of my office feeling awesome. So I do the quick Unconscious mind method, pre-frame it. You say, your unconscious mind knows there is a level way down below the one where you are now. And it will go, yep. And you're honoring the unconscious, which always helps. And then you say, I would like your unconscious mind, so it's not me, I would like your unconscious, not you, I would like your unconscious mind to take you there now. And with the microphone, you'd hear it, and the person just goes like this. So now we get our first actual hypnotic word of the day, which is feel free to use it. It's fun stuff, isn't it? And that'll work. If you have rapport with the person, just saying that gives them the control. That's one of the classic mistakes hypnotists make, even really good ones. They take the locus of control upon themselves because they begin to see trance. I'll get it, sit. They begin to see trance as something like this. Hypnotist does action to subject equals trance. That's the old model. That's cause and effect. All the onus to do everything is on this person. The hypnotist has to create the trance, make everything work, and so on. If you take that on yourself, you'll burn out. You'll burn out really fast because the subject will sit there waiting for you to do everything. You know those subjects, the hyper-analytical ones? And you're saying, your eyes are getting tired. You're sinking into the chair. And you know inside their head going, wrong, not working, boring. See? So that's because they are not participatory. And the cause and effect method, although it can be utilized in some methods, it's just a model, is blown out of the water by the new model, which is vastly superior, which is, think of your hypnosis this way. Hypnotist and subject are in psychodynamic loop with each other, the result of which is a trance state. So the hypnotist will say and do certain behaviors, offering them to the subject. The subject will respond accordingly. The hypnotist is watching, listening, and feeling and calibrating this response, and then will change his or her behavior. So this becomes this continuous feedback loop until the person is in trance. Guess what happens when you do this? It works every time. There's no bad subjects anymore because it's their frickin' job to follow your instructions and go into trance. Put the onus of it on them. You're just going to coach them on how to do it. And when you do that, when you make it their job, their responsibility to be hypnotized, it'll work every time. So is that making any sense? When you do that, at the moment this model gets through your brain, you'll recognize two things. You are both in trance at the same time. Not the same one, but you are both in trance. And people like George, my friend here in the second row, does a lot of mindscaping. I haven't asked you this, I don't think. Do you notice that when you're in that state working with a subject in a mindscape, which is a form of hypnosis, you start to get an internal vision of what they're seeing?
You absolutely do.
Absolutely do. Yeah, the loop becomes so strong. So you must be calibrating the person. You've got to be looking at them. And that's where I thank one of my mentors, Derek Baumer. He drilled it into us. You can't see what you can't see. Now that's a tautology. It's a logical flaw. It's like saying all lawyers are lawyers. Gives you no information. But when Derek said you can't see what you can't see, he meant you can't see what you are not looking for. So many hypnotists work with notes, and they're looking at notes, and that's fine. It's okay to have notes, keep notes, and so on. But look at the person too. They're giving you tons of great information. I saw a hypnotist in Canada who was a trainer for a different organization, and she hypnotized a woman and brought her out of trance 4 or 5 times and was still doing her induction because she hadn't noticed that she got her there. So that's why you must calibrate. You've got to constantly be aware of that person in front of you. So when they sit down, take a snapshot in your brain. What do they look like? What's their posture? How are they breathing? What's their lower lip size? Facial tonus, facial color, all these things you do it unconscious, super fast, because you have to detect change. And when change happens, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. So this model, the first thing it changes is the recognition that you are sharing a trance together. And the second thing it changes is if you leave this room today with this fully embedded in your brain that it is not something you do and it is not your frickin' responsibility to get them in hypnosis, you will relax. It's their job. You're just going to tell them how. Guess what happens? The bad subjects disappear. In fact, I said, I'm a fairly classical Presbyterian Calvinist, and God in His mercy, everybody who hears this, He only sends good subjects their way now. And the other bad subjects will be going to other hypnotists who are not here today. They'll flee from you so they can be not hypnotized by someone else rather than hypnotized by you. Question, sir?
Yeah, I just had a question. If you're coaching someone in a physical task, some people are more coordinated, some people
Yes.
will be quicker or slower to learn. Is there a corollary to someone's ability to go into trance, where some people are easier to coach them, for you to teach them to coach themselves to go into trance?
So the question is correlation to some people in learning. There's different learning styles. Some are more physical and so on. Some learn slower than others. And does that map across into different trance states and learning that? Yes. As Erickson pointed out really well, and Milton didn't get it wrong very often, maybe ever, he said his best subject became his best subject after 300 inductions. So trance is a learning state. It really is. So learning about trance is the ultimate learning state. So we start working this model, and now all your stress disappears. You won't get a bad subject. You're going to teach them to go into trance. And now cause and effect suggestion to do an induction disappears as well. You no longer have to say, you're beginning to relax. You're sinking into the chair. Because we learned for about 40, 50 years, maybe going back to Braid in the late 1800s, you actually need eye closure to show you the person's in trance and to eliminate visual noise and distraction from the visual cortex. That was always the model. Got to get the eyes closed. Okay, your eyes are closed and your eyes are beginning to burn. Eyelids are getting so heavy you can barely keep them open. Going for that eye closure. So you're attempting to suggest something happening to a person who is still awake, whose critical faculty is still there and online. It's counterproductive. Here's a much better way to do it. Person sits down. Close your eyes. I'm not kidding. People complicate stuff. You'll get exactly the same result, and you'll save yourself about 3 minutes work, hard work. So I say to my students at U of T, when you're doing an induction, you typically do not suggest. Instead, you direct. Tell them what to do instead of telling them it's happening. Because now we're back to Clark Hull, 1933, hypnosis and suggestibility. Anything that assumes trance causes trance. In other words, if I need a supposed medium trance to get a cataleptic limb floating in the air, then we can do it the other way around. There's our loop again. I can cause a cataleptic limb without hypnosis and by default get the trance state handed to me. You just enter it from the other side. I love the story. I told it yesterday, so forgive me if you've heard it, but there's enough people in the room who haven't. In 1975, when I started doing stage hypnosis, I was at Georgian College and did this show in a theater, and I was taking away people's names because I was making things up on the fly, and I didn't know what the rules were yet. So I was breaking rules all over the place, but somehow things were still working. And I remember telling some young woman, to forget her name, and she wasn't hypnotized. I was applying this. Taking away her name was giving me the somnambulistic trance, rather than creating a somnambulistic trance and saying, you're forgetting your name. So her name's gone in seconds. She can't remember it. Everyone laughs. Ha ha, hilarious. Give the name back, everyone. Mandel, you rock star. Get off stage. And it was nothing like that, really. But in my mind, it was. We got off stage, and there was a man there, a stuffy old English guy, probably about my age now, come to think of it. And there's a stuffy man. His name is Ted Heath. I'm Ted Heath. I said, pleased to meet you, Mr. Heath. It's my wife, a friend of mine. I'm a hypnotist. I said, oh, that's cool. It's more than cool. I'm the world's greatest hypnotist. I said, maybe, man. I don't know how you quantify that, but that's great. What you're doing is wrong. I thought he was saying I was doing something immoral. Wrong? Like, dude, what am I doing? He said, you cannot take someone's name away without somnambulism. It's wrong. And I said, I just did it. He said, that's the point. Shouldn't be doing it. It's wrong because it can't be done. So, whoa. It's this model. Create the phenomena first. So this leads us to this wonderful tool, catalepsy. Now, catalepsy was discovered way back in the early days of hypnosis, when it came out of mesmerism, the golden days of hypnosis. In fact, even going back to the 1700s, you got Maximilian Hell, who was a Jesuit priest who was doing bloodletting. Remember, back in the 1700s, bloodletting was the cure for everything. No matter what was wrong with you, you got too much blood, or take some out. We don't have syringes and things. Got a razor, barber's razor. In fact, barbers did the bloodletting. They were the surgeons of the day. They set bones, took blood and all these things. And Maximilian Hell was doing bloodletting, and he had a student who got real good at this, and it was Franz Anton Mesmer. And he was doing all this mesmeric passes and stuff, and people were going through and doing the funky chicken. And they started noticing this phenomena of catalepsy. And catalepsy is limbs would become rigid and float around, and you could get a cataleptic arm or cataleptic legs you can't move. And we've all seen, even in light stages of hypnosis, cataleptic eyelids. They just don't work. In fact, Dave Ellman brilliantly built that into the Ellman induction. I want you to pretend you can't open your eyes, try as hard as you can, and keep trying, keep pretending you can't open them. That creates eyelid catalepsy using that same law of Clark Hall, 1933. By creating the catalepsy, you get the light trance automatically. So, catalepsy, just think of it as muscles that don't work. Sometimes they float, sometimes they don't move. It's like you can't lift your arm, whatever. It's cataleptic. This is a marvelous inroad for producing hypnotic states. It's quick, it's easy, and it's a lot of fun too, boys and girls. I'll show you. Thank you. Right. How are we doing for time? Oh, we're all right. There's no problem at all. We're doing just fine. It's the most wonderful thing. All right, off the Gandalf voice for a minute. Maybe borrow someone I've not worked with. Come on up here, sir. Seth, good to see you. Would you prefer the hypnosis chair or the trance chair?
Yes.
All right, right answer. Yeah. There you go. I'm a comic genius. That's instinct. You can't teach that stuff. Okay, Seth, all kidding aside for 5 seconds. Time's up. Would you like to experience a very pleasant trance? We've not planned this in any way, right? And so I can demonstrate just a couple of phenomena. Sure. All right, so take a moment, close your eyes, go inside, and ask your unconscious mind if it's okay with him for you to really enjoy a pleasant, deep trance for a little while. One that's going to be powerful. You got a yes signal. That's great. This will clear a lot of space for you right away if you do this. Just check for congruence in the response. So you can open your eyes now, come back to now. Here's your entry. Now listen, it's not magic words. Chris and I don't teach many techniques so much as principles. And principles are like Lego pieces. You can interlock them all over the place. So, Seth, can I just borrow that hand for a second? Okay. Here. Thank you. This one. I want to borrow this one.
Okay.
That's right. Eyes closed now. And as you focus your attention on this hand, right here, take a deep breath. And exhale. And breathe in. That's it. And sleep now. All the way into trance. So, what I'm doing here is some rapid incorporation and utilization. And I'm just going to let him enjoy this, and then we're going to bring it around. Let's go into a next thing. So let's presume he's well on his way. Okay. No presuming necessary. In a moment, I'm going to pick up your right hand by the thumb, not very high. I'll let it drop. Just let it drop and go even deeper. Here we go. Nice. So we have a really good relaxation response, and I'll pop around the back. I'm just going to touch your neck, Seth, and it won't bother you in the slightest. Just enjoy this feeling relaxed and comfortable. Oh, boy, we're getting really good there. So here's a nice deepener. In a moment, I'm going to put my hands on your shoulders. I'll ask you to take a deep breath. And when I press down, just exhale and go twice as deep into trance. So breathe in now. And exhale. Go deeper now. That's right. And you can maintain your own ecology and stay in the chair with no difficulty. This comes from Forensic Hypnosis by Hibbert and Worrell. It's a really nice technique. The shoulder press is great because it keeps them in the kinesthetic feeling system. We want him to develop a deep, relaxing feeling state, although we certainly don't need relaxation for hypnosis. Watch Triumph of the Will, the documentary of the Nuremberg rallies. You see tens of thousands of people whose eyes are not closed and they're not relaxed, but boy, are they in trances. And so he's just enjoying the state now. So we're going to let him just set up a process here. And you can permit this to float lightly and comfortably in the air. That's it. Take all the weight yourself now. Let it float. That right to your very fingertips. And as the catalepsy increases in this limb, I'd like your unconscious mind to find something it would like to change. Something it can change by writing a program in your unconscious mind. And when it's found that, your hand will begin to sink as the program installs. And when it touches down on your leg, something brand new and perfect is built in your brain at the rate of 1 million connections a second. That's right, something new developing. Let your hypnosis skills grow. That's it. Now the beauty of using catalepsy like this is I can use this as a gauge as to when my work's done. I tell him to set up a program and it's going to sink down, and I can see where he is in the rewriting process by how low his hand has gone, and I can gauge my time. And when it touches down, then he'll come out of trance and notice how good he feels. And you can make shifts really, really quickly. That's it, all the way back to now. All the way back. Hi.
Hi.
Wide awake now. Give this man a hand. Okay, so send you back. Now, what you'll notice as he came out of it there was a really nice postural reorientation. When he came out, he did one of these. Always look for postural reorientation. That is your indication that your subject was somewhere else. If you bring them out of trance and they go like this, you 1, 2, 3, and they go, probably didn't do much. But if they get up and stretch or yawn, or you're going to see them reorient to this world. This will take away all those ridiculous hypnotic scales, which are attempts to digitize analog phenomena. They don't even work in sequence. A guy from a different organization in Toronto many years ago said, "Hey Mike, I'll take you out for a big lunch." I said, "You're speaking my language." He said, "All I want to do is pick your brain for an hour." I said, "You got it." I picked the buffet, it was amazing. And he said, "What is the best hypnosis scale for depth to use?" I said, "I don't know what you mean." He said, "Well, do you use the Davis-Husband scale or the Friedlander-Sarban scale or the Lacron-Bordeaux scale or the Harvard Standards hypnotizer?" I said, "None of them." He said, "Why?" I said, "You play chess, right, Andrew?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "You're asking me, is it better to play on a wooden board or a marble one?" He said, "It doesn't make any difference." I said, "Yeah, it doesn't make any difference with any of them. Forget about scales. Interact with a human being, with that person in front of you, and when they can congruently tell you the problem's gone, believe them. Calibrate, watch what's happening, see where they are." And someone near the front. Can I borrow you for a sec? You're on the end. Have a seat. Doing good?
Yeah.
Got one of my awesome shirts.
Oh,
have a seat for a sec. Are you comfortable?
Yeah.
Are you aware of the people in the room?
Yeah.
And that's cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can I borrow that hand for a second?
Sure.
Thank you. And as your eyes close now, that's right. And notice the different sensations beginning in this hand. That's right. And the tingling sensation begins. Notice how different that hand feels from the other hand. And continue to go deeper now. Now, notice I didn't tell him his hand was going to float in the air. But it became cataleptic because of what I did. His hand just started floating in the air. You never have to say your hand's going to float. Now, in this case, working with this dear gentleman, Seth, he went very, very relaxed, so I just utilized that. I act as though that's exactly what I want to have happen, let him relax, and then create the catalepsy artificially right afterwards. But in this case, this is what will typically happen. This is the kinesthetic ambiguity rapid induction. This is pure Milton Erickson, and my mentor, Derek Baumer, taught this to me. This is a surefire induction if you've got to get someone in trance in a hurry. Just keep going deeper, and your hand will sink down as you flow all the way into a somnambulistic state. And when it touches your leg, you can go deeper and deeper and still maintain your chair position and comfort. And I'll talk to them. So when I switch back to the waking world voice like this, he stops paying attention to me right away. And you can use this under stressful conditions. You can use it standing, and I'll deconstruct it so you can see how to use it. And this will automatically deepen the trance for you. You don't have to do any work. You can sit and play Tetris on your iPad while this is going on, or whatever, right? So, a number of years ago, I had a TV event, and they said, "Will you come on and do some hypnosis?" I said, "No, but I'll promote the event. I don't want to hypnotize anyone on live TV, because there's always some lunatic who says, 'I was at home and put my hand on the stove, and I'm suing you now.'" You know what it's like, right? So I said, I'll promote the show and talk about hypnosis. They said, fine. I show up for breakfast television. They bring me in. We're right by the windows open to the street of Toronto, Queen Street. And they said, okay, we're going to go on the air now in about 20 seconds. Who did you bring in to hypnotize? I said, well, I told the producer I'm not hypnotizing anyone. They said, no, we need you to. We just said on the bumper you're doing hypnosis when we come back. See, he's just completing the work here. And so I said, quick, that security guard. Brought him over. I said, what's your name? He said, oh, Daryl. I said, can I borrow that hand? Yeah. He goes into trance. We put him on a motorcycle, his favorite thing. He's sitting riding around. TV show is happy. Daryl comes back out of it, got a free bike ride. This is the induction. This is fast and certain. And go deeper now. And I want you to enjoy the fact that your unconscious mind is learning at a ridiculous rate so fast that this day you'll learn much more about hypnosis than you ever have to this point. And on the count of 5, you can be wide awake, alert and refreshed, and notice how good you feel. But instead of walking back to your chair, you'll start to walk towards the camera at the back of the room, and then we'll snap out of it and burst out laughing when you realize what happened, and go back to your chair. Ready? 1. Coming out of it, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Thanks, man. Give this man a hand for helping out. Okay. Hey, where are you going? You're over here. Be careful, the laughing trance is close to the itchy trance. You guys know? Don't even have to look. Do you notice the laughing trance is close to the itchy trance? Some people find being itchy is very personal, because some itches can be very personal. What does that mean? Attach your own meaning. So let's do the induction. I'll show you how to do it. Neri, can I borrow you just as an assistant? We'll do it standing just to make it easy for people to see. This is a nice way of getting a cataleptic limb that will deepen a trance for you, and you get an induction to boot. So I'm going to dissociate him from his hand by linguistically doing so first. I don't say, give me your hand. I say, could I please borrow that hand? So now it's already dissociated. It's not even his hand, it's that hand. Now I don't have to even say necessarily, hand it to me. I can put my hand here. This will start to rise like in a handshake interrupt. So we'll just turn this way a little bit. Almost like in a handshake interrupt induction. So this comes up. I'll take his hand. I'll lift it to a 45-degree angle. Do not jam his elbow against the side. That'll undo some of it. So I want him comfortable like this at 45 degrees. He got big hands, man. Those are man-sized hands. So eyes closed now. And I do that with intention. And when I let go of this, I immediately do these little touches until you can notice the shifting sensation in this hand. And what that does is I'm sort of pushing it down, then I'm sort of suddenly lifting it up, and it's only for a few seconds, and it will become cataleptic. It'll just float. And then you draw the person's attention to it. And you say, and notice how much different it feels in the other hand. Well, it has to. It's a different frickin' hand. It can't feel the same. Wrong direction. And then now you utilize this for whatever you want. You're doing street hypnosis, you can stick it on their face. If you're having it sync, you can have it concomitant with anything you're doing. Have it sync to deepen the trance, and when it touches down on their leg, they'll be at a level far deeper than before. Does that make sense? So I want everybody to do this right now on someone nearby. You got a couple of minutes. Just turn around, take their hand, get the position, do the cataleptic touch until it goes rigid. Thanks, buddy.